April 1912. More than a century has passed since the Titanic disappeared beneath the North Atlantic. The wreck now rests almost 4,000 meters below the surface. Silent, dark, untouched by sunlight. Most people believe the story ended the moment the ship slipped beneath the waves. But some researchers believe that is where another mystery began. In the early hours of a routine ocean survey, a modern research vessel drifted over waters not far from the Titanic's resting place. The mission had nothing to do with history. The crew was mapping the ocean floor. Everything seemed normal. Then one of the radio operators noticed a strange signal, weak, broken, repeating at regular intervals. At first, nobody paid much attention. Signals from satellites, passing ships, and underwater equipment are common in the Atlantic. Interference happens every day. The operator logged the transmission anyway. Minutes later, the signal returned. Exactly the same. The pattern repeated with unusual precision. The ship's engineers checked every onboard system. Nothing appeared to be malfunctioning. The signal was coming from somewhere outside the vessel. The research team recorded the transmission. Back at their laboratory, analysts began comparing the frequency with historical records. That was when everything changed. One specialist noticed something impossible. The frequency closely resembled emergency radio transmissions documented during the Titanic disaster. No one believed it. It had to be coincidence. Technology had changed completely since 1912. The original wireless equipment no longer existed. There was no logical way an authentic Titanic transmission could still be detected. Scientists searched for modern explanations. Perhaps another vessel was transmitting nearby. Perhaps military equipment had created interference. Perhaps software had incorrectly identified the signal. Every possibility was tested. None completely matched the data. Curiosity quickly replaced skepticism. Historians joined the investigation. Old wireless records were examined again. Original distress messages were compared line by line. Most matched known historical archives. But hidden among thousands of pages was one small inconsistency. A sequence of numbers, ignored for decades, almost identical to the modern transmission. No one could explain why. The discovery was quietly shared between researchers. Some warned against making it public. Extraordinary claims required extraordinary evidence. Others believed the mystery deserved investigation. News of the signal eventually leaked. The internet exploded with theories. Some claimed the Titanic was somehow calling through time. Others argued it was an elaborate hoax. Engineers insisted physics made such a signal impossible. Historians remained cautious. No verified explanation existed. The research vessel returned to the same location several weeks later. The crew expected silence. Instead, the signal came back. This time it lasted longer, and hidden within the static, there appeared to be something else. Something that sounded almost like a human voice. No one on board could understand the words, but everyone agreed on one thing. Someone, or something, was transmitting from the darkness below. April 10th, 1912. The Titanic left Southampton carrying more than 2,000 people. For many, it was the beginning of a dream. No one imagined it would become one of history's greatest disasters. The ship stopped briefly in France, then in Ireland. After that, it entered the open Atlantic. The weather remained calm. The sea looked almost perfectly flat. Survivors would later describe it as strangely quiet. There was very little wind, almost no waves. The stars filled the sky. It was beautiful and dangerously deceptive. Without waves breaking against floating ice, lookouts had far less warning. Just before midnight on April 14, the lookout spotted something ahead. An iceberg. The warning bell rang. The bridge ordered an emergency turn. The engines were reversed, but it was too late. The iceberg scraped along the ship's starboard side. From above, the damage appeared minor. Many passengers barely noticed the impact. Below the waterline, it was catastrophic. Several watertight compartments flooded almost immediately. The Titanic had been designed to survive flooding, but not this much, not this fast. Captain Edward Smith received the first damage reports. Ship designer Thomas Andrews inspected the lower decks. His conclusion was devastating. The ship would sink. Wireless operators Jack Phillips and Harold Bride began sending distress calls across the Atlantic. First came CQD, then the newer SOS signal. Nearby ships answered. Some were too far away. Others never received the messages clearly. One ship remained the center of controversy, the Californian. Its exact role has been debated for more than a century. Could it have arrived sooner? Could more lives have been saved? The questions remain. As lifeboats were lowered, Confusion spread across the decks. Many boats left only partially full. Some passengers refused to believe the ship was in real danger. The orchestra continued playing. Crew members tried to maintain order. Parents held their children close. Families were separated forever. Then something unusual appeared in several survivor accounts. A handful of witnesses described strange lights on the horizon. Some believed another ship was nearby. Others thought the lights moved in impossible ways. Investigators could never fully agree on what had been seen. Atmospheric conditions that night were highly unusual. Experts later suggested that rare optical effects may have distorted distances and visibility. If true, those conditions may have affected both the lookouts and nearby ships. But they do not explain every report. Another mystery emerged from the wireless logs. Some records mention weak, unidentified radio interference during the distress calls. The source was never identified. Most historians dismissed it as normal background noise. The notes received little attention. For decades, they remained buried in archival documents, until researchers comparing those records with the modern transmission noticed something unexpected. The same unusual pulse pattern appeared in both. The similarities were not proof, but they were difficult to ignore. Could it simply be coincidence? An equipment artifact? Or had investigators overlooked something hidden in the historical record for more than a century? No one had an answer. Yet the deeper researchers looked into the final hours of the Titanic, the more the official story seemed to contain small mysteries that had never truly been resolved. The investigation no longer focused only on the ocean. It moved into secure laboratories. Every second of the mysterious transmission was examined. Audio engineers cleaned away background noise. Computer programs separated every layer of static. The results surprised everyone. The signal was not random. It contained a repeating structure. At first, researchers believed it was simply interference created by modern equipment. But the pattern remained. No matter how many filters were applied, no matter how many different systems analyzed it, the sequence stayed exactly the same. A communications specialist suggested slowing the recording. Another recommended increasing the frequency range. When the audio was processed again, something unexpected appeared. Short bursts. Perfectly spaced. Almost like someone was sending a coded message. Cryptographers were invited to study the pattern. Some believed it resembled early Morse code. Others argued it was only coincidence. The spacing was close, but not exact. One team attempted to translate the pulses anyway. Most of the sequence produced meaningless letters. Then a small section formed recognizable characters. Not a complete sentence. Only fragments. Enough to start another debate. Was it an accident? Or was the human brain simply finding patterns where none existed? Psychologists warned investigators about confirmation bias. People naturally search for meaning in random information. The warning was reasonable. But another discovery complicated everything. The recording contained a faint background sound. It was almost impossible to hear. Only after dozens of enhancement attempts did it become noticeable. A slow rhythm, metallic, repeating every few seconds. Marine engineers compared it with recordings from modern ships. Nothing matched. Then someone suggested comparing it with archived sounds recreated from the Titanic itself. Steam engines, boilers, mechanical pumps. Most comparisons failed. But one recording stood out. The rhythm was remarkably similar to one of the ship's auxiliary engine systems. It was not identical, but it was close enough to attract attention. The room fell silent. Nobody claimed it proved anything. Similarity is not evidence. Yet another coincidence had appeared. Investigators requested original wireless logs from museums and national archives. Many documents had already been digitized. Others had not been examined for decades. While reading handwritten notes from a wireless operator aboard another vessel, one historian noticed a forgotten entry. It described hearing an unidentified transmission shortly after the Titanic's distress calls. The operator could not understand it. He assumed it came from atmospheric interference. The note was filed away, never investigated further. When its timing was compared with the modern recording, the intervals were strikingly similar. Again, not proof. But another unanswered question. Public interest exploded after news of the recording leaked. Television programs called it impossible. Scientists urged caution. Internet forums filled with theories. Some believed the ocean was somehow replaying the past. Others claimed secret military technology was responsible. A few insisted the recording was an elaborate hoax. The research team ignored the speculation. They wanted evidence, not headlines. Then the ocean delivered something unexpected. The mysterious signal returned. stronger than before, longer than before, and this time, its source appeared to come from almost the exact location of the Titanic's wreck. The only way to investigate further was to go back into the darkness. Within weeks, an international research expedition was approved. Its official mission was simple: study the condition of the Titanic wreck. Privately, the team had another objective: find the source of the mysterious signal. The expedition carried one of the most advanced deep-sea submersibles ever built. Its cameras could capture details smaller than a coin. Its sonar could map the ocean floor with incredible precision. Every system was tested repeatedly. There could be no mistakes at nearly 4,000 meters below the surface. As dawn broke, the submersible slipped beneath the waves. Sunlight faded within minutes. Blue turned to black. The pressure outside increased with every meter. Communication with the surface became slower. The silence grew heavier. Hours later, the first shapes appeared: scattered debris, broken metal, a shoe lying alone on the seabed. A reminder that this was more than a shipwreck. It was a grave. The pilot reduced speed. Ahead, the massive bow of the Titanic slowly emerged from the darkness. Even after more than a century, its size was overwhelming. Rust-covered railings stretched into the black water. The famous anchor rested exactly where it had fallen silent. The crew began their survey. High-resolution cameras recorded every section. Nothing seemed unusual. Then the sonar operator noticed a faint echo. It was moving, not quickly, but steadily. The pilot turned the submersible toward it. The echo disappeared. They checked the equipment. Everything appeared normal. The survey continued. Minutes later, the echo returned. This time, closer. Again it vanished before the cameras reached it. Some believed it was a school of deep-sea fish. Others suggested floating debris. No one could confirm either explanation. As the submersible circled the bow, another problem appeared. One camera flickered, then another. Static briefly covered every monitor. The lights dimmed for less than a second. The backup systems activated immediately. Power returned. Engineers searched for the cause. No fault was found. The crew continued, determined not to waste the rare dive. Near the forward cargo hold, the cameras captured something unexpected. Fresh disturbance on the seabed. Fine sediment had recently been displaced, but there had been no strong currents, no evidence of another submersible, no visible marine activity large enough to leave such marks. The pilot hovered above the area. The lights illuminated a narrow trail leading away from the wreck. It disappeared into complete darkness. The mission leader faced a difficult choice: continue documenting the Titanic or follow the unexplained trail. After several tense moments, the order was given: follow it. The submersible moved slowly forward, meter by meter. The wreck faded behind them. Only darkness remained. The sonar continued tracking the strange path. Then every display froze. For 3 long seconds. No navigation, no sonar, no camera feed, only silence. When the systems came back online, the trail was gone. And the submersible was no longer pointing in the direction it had been traveling. It had somehow turned several degrees without any command from the pilot. The crew checked every control. Nothing had malfunctioned. No one could explain the sudden change. Then the radio operator heard it. A faint transmission. Not from the surface, not from another vessel, from somewhere ahead. The same repeating signal, clearer than ever before, and for the first time, every person inside the submersible heard what sounded like a single human word hidden beneath the static. The crew replayed the recording over and over. The word was faint, distorted. No two experts agreed on what they had heard. Some believed it was only random static. Others insisted it sounded unmistakably human. Without clear evidence, the expedition refused to make any public claims. Instead, they followed the only lead they had: the signal's location. When its position was mapped against the Titanic's original blueprints, something unexpected appeared. The transmission seemed to originate from a section of the ship once occupied by first-class cabins. That alone was unusual. The wireless room had been located elsewhere. There was no known reason for a radio signal to come from a passenger cabin. The team requested original construction plans. Most had survived. Some had been damaged. A few pages were missing entirely. Historians compared every available version. One cabin repeatedly stood out. Its numbering was inconsistent. On one blueprint, it appeared clearly. On another, it had been renumbered. In later copies, it seemed to vanish altogether. No official explanation accompanied the changes. Researchers searched passenger lists. More than 2,000 names had been carefully documented over the years. Every ticket, every reservation, every survivor, every victim. Yet one record refused to fit. A passenger appeared in an early booking ledger. The ticket number was valid. The payment record existed, but the name beside it had been partially erased. Only a few letters remained, enough to prove someone had been there. Not enough to identify who. The discovery raised difficult questions. Had it been a clerical error, a canceled reservation, or had the record been altered after the disaster? The investigators turned to surviving correspondence from the ship's crew. Most letters repeated familiar stories. Then one diary caught their attention. It belonged to a steward assigned to the first-class section. In one entry, written only hours before the collision, he mentioned delivering luggage to a cabin that did not appear on later deck plans. The note was brief. No explanation, no cabin number, only a strange sentence. The gentleman requested complete privacy. Historians debated the meaning. Perhaps the steward simply remembered the wrong cabin. Perhaps the diary contained an innocent mistake. Still, it matched the unexplained inconsistencies. The expedition reviewed footage from their dive, frame by frame. Near the area where the mysterious cabin should have been, one camera briefly captured an opening inside the wreck. It had not appeared during earlier surveys. The image lasted less than 2 seconds. Then floating sediment covered it again. Marine archaeologists offered a simple explanation. The wreck is constantly changing. Rust weakens the structure. Openings appear. Others collapse. There was nothing extraordinary about that, yet the timing was difficult to ignore. The mysterious signal, the altered blueprints, the erased passenger record, the steward's diary, and now, an unexpected opening, exactly where the forgotten cabin should have been. The expedition requested permission for another dive. This time they would enter the wreck itself. It was a dangerous decision. The Titanic had become increasingly unstable. One wrong movement could trigger a collapse. Some members of the team argued against it. No mystery was worth risking lives. Others believed they might never get another opportunity. After hours of debate, the mission leader made the final decision. They would go inside, because if the answers existed anywhere, they were waiting in the darkness beyond that forgotten doorway. The 6-minute blackout only deepened the mystery. No data had been lost. Every camera recording remained intact. Every instrument log was preserved. Yet no one could explain why all communication with the surface had disappeared at the same moment. By now, the investigation had reached a crossroads. The evidence was real, the explanations were not. Researchers divided every possibility into separate categories: verified facts, plausible explanations, and pure speculation. The first theory was the simplest: natural interference. The North Atlantic is one of the most challenging environments on Earth. Powerful underwater currents, electromagnetic disturbances, pressure unlike anywhere humans normally work. Could these conditions have produced unusual radio signals? Engineers believed they could. Communication equipment sometimes behaves unpredictably underwater, but there was a problem. Natural interference is usually random. The mysterious transmission repeated the same pattern every time it appeared. That consistency was difficult to explain. The second theory focused on human technology. Perhaps another research vessel had unknowingly transmitted on a similar frequency. Military equipment, commercial shipping, even satellites. Modern radio systems can occasionally create unexpected signal reflections. Investigators checked shipping records, nearby vessels, military notices, satellite activity. Nothing matched the timing or location. It remained possible, but no evidence supported it. The third theory involved mistakes. Could investigators simply be seeing patterns that were never there? Psychologists warned about confirmation bias. When people expect to find a mystery, the brain naturally connects unrelated events. The erased passenger record, the damaged blueprint, the strange audio. Individually, each had an ordinary explanation. Together, they appeared mysterious. Perhaps the mystery existed only because humans connected separate coincidences. Many scientists considered this the strongest possibility. Still, the signal itself remained unexplained. Then came the more controversial theories. Some suggested the ocean preserves echoes of the past, a natural phenomenon, sometimes called an environmental recording. There is no accepted scientific evidence that events can be replayed like a recording through seawater. Yet the idea fascinated millions. Others proposed that an unknown object on the ocean floor was producing the transmission. Not the Titanic itself, something nearby, something never discovered. Deep-sea mapping of the Atlantic is still incomplete. Large areas remain unexplored even today. Could another wreck be involved? Could natural geological activity create repeating signals? Researchers admitted they could not completely rule it out. Finally came the most extraordinary claims, that the transmission came from something beyond current scientific understanding: ghosts, time distortions, unexplained phenomena. The internet embraced these ideas almost immediately. The research team did not. No evidence supported supernatural conclusions. The investigators remained focused on what could actually be tested. Then, an independent laboratory released its own analysis. Without knowing the expedition's conclusions, its software identified the same repeating pulse pattern. The results surprised everyone. Two completely separate teams, working independently, had found the same anomaly. It did not prove what the signal was, but it strengthened one important conclusion. The transmission itself was real. The mystery was not imagined. As public debate intensified, the expedition prepared its final report. Every fact, every contradiction, every theory would soon be examined together, because after months of investigation, the team believed they had found the explanation that best fit all the evidence. Whether the world would accept it was another mystery entirely. Months after the expedition ended, the research team gathered one final time. The excitement that had surrounded the investigation was gone. Only evidence remained: every recording, every photograph, every instrument log, every historical document. The goal was simple: separate what was known from what was merely believed. The first conclusion came quickly. The mysterious transmission was real. Multiple recording systems had captured it. Independent laboratories detected the same repeating pattern. It was not fabricated. It was not the result of a single faulty instrument. Something had produced that signal. The harder question was what? The team reviewed the historical records again. The similarities between the modern signal and the Titanic's distress frequencies were undeniable. But they were not identical. Small differences appeared throughout the recordings, enough to suggest the signal was not an authentic transmission from 1912. Instead, experts proposed a more likely explanation. Some unknown modern source was broadcasting on a frequency that happened to resemble the old emergency signals. It was an extraordinary coincidence, but not an impossible one. The underwater audio received similar scrutiny. The faint metallic rhythm that some believed matched the Titanic's machinery was compared with hundreds of industrial sounds: ship engines, oil platforms, subsea equipment, natural seismic activity. None produced a perfect match. Several came surprisingly close. The investigators concluded that the sound could not be identified with confidence. The supposed human voice proved even more controversial. Linguists, audio specialists, artificial intelligence software, each produced different interpretations. No word could be verified. The recording contained sounds that resembled speech. That was all anyone could honestly claim. The forgotten cabin was easier to explain. Marine archaeologists demonstrated how decades of corrosion had altered the wreck. Entire corridors had collapsed. New openings had formed. Others had disappeared beneath twisted steel. The mysterious entrance likely had not existed when earlier photographs were taken. Time itself had reshaped the ship. The altered blueprints also found an explanation. Several copies had been revised during construction, and again after the disaster for investigative purposes. Differences between surviving plans were expected. Incomplete archives had created the illusion of a hidden room. Then came the erased passenger record. Historians spent weeks examining the original documents: the faded ink, the damaged paper, the missing letters. Their conclusion was frustrating. The record was too incomplete to identify the passenger. It could represent a canceled booking, a clerical correction, or simple deterioration over more than a century. There was no reliable evidence of a missing passenger. One mystery after another received ordinary explanations, not perfect explanations, but reasonable ones. Only one question refused to disappear: the signal. Even after eliminating every unsupported theory, no one could identify its source. No nearby vessel matched it. No known underwater installation matched it. No natural phenomenon fully explained its repeating structure. The final report reached a careful conclusion. There was no evidence that the Titanic was sending messages from the deep. There was no evidence of paranormal activity. There was no evidence of time travel. But there was also no verified explanation for the transmission itself. The investigation had solved many smaller mysteries. Yet the central mystery remained. Sometimes, the most honest answer is the simplest one. We do not know, and perhaps that is why the Titanic continues to captivate the world. Not because every question has an answer, but because one important question still does not. As the report was being prepared for publication, one final email arrived from the expedition vessel. Attached was a single image captured during the blackout. No one on the research team remembered seeing it before. The photograph showed the narrow compartment behind the collapsed wall. Inside was the reflective object, but after the image was enhanced, investigators noticed something they had completely missed. It was not reflecting the submersible's light. It appeared to be glowing on its own. The image was examined immediately. At first, the glowing object appeared to be nothing more than a trick of the camera. Deep beneath the ocean, light behaves in unusual ways. Particles scatter it, metal reflects it. Digital sensors can create strange artifacts. The investigators expected to find a simple explanation. Instead, they found another mystery. The raw image files were compared with every other frame recorded during the dive. Most showed complete darkness beyond the compartment. Only one image contained the glow. It lasted less than a second. Then it vanished. Photography experts searched for signs of image corruption. None were found. The file appeared authentic. Even so, authenticity did not reveal what the object actually was. The team enhanced the image, not to invent details, only to make existing features easier to see. Slowly, a shape emerged. Small, rectangular, with smooth edges unlike the jagged steel surrounding it. It did not resemble part of the ship's structure, nor did it resemble any modern equipment known to have visited the wreck. Marine archaeologists urged caution. At such low resolutions, the human brain often mistakes random shapes for meaningful objects. The investigators agreed. No conclusions could be drawn from a single photograph. Still, curiosity demanded one final attempt. Permission was requested for another expedition. This time, the objective was limited. Return to the compartment, document the object. Do not disturb the wreck. Do not remove anything. Months later, favorable weather finally arrived. The submersible descended once again. The crew followed the exact route from the previous dive. The bow appeared. The broken corridor. The collapsed cabin. Everything looked familiar. Then they reached the compartment. It was gone. Not the object, the entire opening. A massive section of the ceiling had collapsed. Tons of steel now blocked the entrance. There was no safe path forward. Robotic cameras searched every visible gap. Nothing. The reflective object could no longer be seen. Whether it remained behind the debris, or had never been there at all, no one could determine. The expedition ended without recovering new evidence. The mystery had quite literally buried itself. Back on land, independent reviewers examined every document produced during the investigation. Most agreed on several important points. The signal had been recorded. The blackout had occurred. Historical inconsistencies existed, though each had plausible explanations. The glowing object remained unexplained because the available evidence was too limited. In other words, the mystery was real. The extraordinary conclusions were not. Over time, public interest slowly faded. News outlets moved on. Scientists returned to other projects. The ocean remained silent, until nearly a year later, a deep-sea listening station, hundreds of kilometers from the Titanic, detected a familiar pattern. The same repeating transmission, the same intervals, the same unanswered question. This time, it wasn't coming from the wreck. It was coming from somewhere else in the North Atlantic. Whatever had been recorded near the Titanic, it had never belonged to the Titanic alone. The new transmission changed everything. For months, investigators had focused on one location, the Titanic. Now, the signal had appeared hundreds of kilometers away. That single discovery forced the team to reconsider every assumption they had made. Perhaps the Titanic had never been the source. Perhaps it had only been the place where the signal was first noticed. Researchers expanded their search across the North Atlantic. Historical shipping records were compared with modern sonar maps. Thousands of radio logs were reviewed. Deep-sea listening stations shared years of archived recordings. The pattern appeared only a handful of times. Always weak, always brief, always impossible to trace precisely. No two detections came from the exact same location. The source seemed to move. Slowly, unpredictably. Engineers proposed several possibilities: underwater geological activity, rare electromagnetic disturbances, signal reflections caused by changing ocean conditions. Each explanation could account for part of the mystery. None explained all of it. Marine scientists reminded the public how little of the deep ocean has been explored. Even today, large sections of the seafloor remain unmapped in detail. Unknown natural phenomena are still being discovered. History offered another lesson. Many events once considered impossible eventually found ordinary explanations through better technology and more evidence. The investigators believed this mystery deserved the same patience. The Titanic itself no longer stood at the center of the story. It had become the doorway to a much larger question. Why had similar signals appeared in different places? What process created the repeating pattern? And why had no one identified its source after so many years? The final report avoided sensational conclusions. It stated only what the evidence supported. A repeating underwater transmission had been recorded. Its origin remained unknown. Historical similarities to the Titanic were intriguing, but insufficient to establish a direct connection. The blackout during the expedition had no confirmed cause. The glowing object could not be identified from the available evidence. Every extraordinary claim required stronger proof than currently existed. Some viewers would undoubtedly prefer a supernatural ending. Others would insist that every mystery already had a scientific answer. The investigators accepted neither position without evidence. Sometimes, the most fascinating mysteries are not the ones we solve. They are the ones that remind us how much remains unknown. Far below the surface, the Titanic continues to rest in silence. Its steel slowly disappears beneath layers of rust. Its stories continue to captivate generations. Not because the ship is haunted, not because it sends messages through time, but because it represents humanity's endless search for answers. Every expedition uncovers something new. Every discovery raises another question. And somewhere beneath the cold waters of the North Atlantic, a signal still waits to be understood. Perhaps one day, better technology will reveal its source. Perhaps it will prove to be an ordinary natural phenomenon, or perhaps it will lead scientists towards something no one has yet imagined. Until that day arrives, the mystery remains exactly where it has always been, hidden in the darkness, waiting for the next question. The investigation is over. The evidence has been examined. The theories have been tested. But the final answer has yet to be found.